Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Okay, the South African Weather Service wishes to thank the National Press Club and the media fraternity at large for their continued interest in the work that this National Meteorological Service does in the fulfillment of its legislative mandate. As you might be aware, the South African Weather Service is tasked with the daunting task, responsibility of, among other things, providing public good services, such as the weather and climate warning services intended for the general benefit of the population and the safety of life and property. This includes the provision of daily rainfall, as well as minimum and maximum temperatures, data to the general public, meteorological support for aviation and maritime, search and rescue activities, and services for the benefit of subsistence farmers and fisheries. Most importantly, the South African Weather Service serves as the country's single authoritative voice when it comes to the issuing of severe weather or impact-based forecasting warnings. Given South Africa's vulnerability to hazardous weather events such as severe thunderstorms, floods, drought, heat waves, and wildfires, this is an urgent call or the urgent need for the public to be weather smart. A weather smart public is one that is safe, more informed, alert, resilient, and has timely access to relevant information and services where matters of the weather and climate are concerned. We are therefore thankful as the South African Weather Service that the media has a keen interest in our work. We believe that without the amplification of our voice through the media, the ideal of a weather-smart public will be a pie in the sky. I now turn my attention to the weather expectations over the spring period, that is from the month September to November 2024. South Africa experiences varying weather conditions in different seasons. Due to its unique geographical location and set up, the two distinct oceans surrounding the country, that is the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, play a significant role that influences the typical weather conditions that we experience from season to season. The topographical shape-up and the landscape of South Africa doesn't only serve to beautify the country, but also contribute to the typical weather conditions that affect us daily. For example, the western coast appears to be generally cool. That is due to the cold Benguela current. And the eastern coast is relatively warmer, as influenced by the Agulhas current, that is the warm Agulhas current. The eastern Highveld and the Drakensberg regions are relatively cool and wet, while the northeastern region is relatively warm to hot. The uniqueness of South Africa is such that at one end of the country, the public may experience extreme cold temperatures, whilst the other end, communities may experience extremely hot temperatures. What a contrast. During the recent onset of our 2024 spring, many South Africans experienced very hot conditions, with some parts experiencing heat wave conditions. However, the onset of the cold frontal system and the cut-off low system changed everything. The cut-off lows are intense low-pressure systems that are notorious for causing widespread flooding, as evidenced by events such as the devastating floods that occurred in KwaZulu-Natal in April 2022. These weather systems can also bring damaging winds, severe thunderstorms, and even snow, depending on the season in which they develop. They are most frequent during the autumn and the spring season, with the highest frequency during the month of April. The South African Weather Service accurately predicted the system and its anticipated impact in advance and started issuing the warnings and media release that was characterized as spring cut-off low to bring about snow, very cold, wet and windy conditions to southern and eastern South Africa this weekend. So that's how the media release came out, trying to show that something is coming. The South African Weather Service media release issued days ahead of time. It mentioned widespread disruptive snow. That should have been a heads up, say something is coming. Consequently, the system brought extremely cold conditions and a severe snow event that wreaked havoc on the roads between the Free State, KwaZulu-Natal, and Eastern Cape. Despite the warnings issued, regrettably, many were affected, and unfortunately, lives were even or reportedly lost during the extreme event. The event in question can be characterized as follows. It was a well-developed upper air cut-off flow system. I've already explained what is a cut-off flow system. It was associated with significant coldness and hence instability aloft or up in the atmosphere. This allowed it to be an efficient producer of widespread deep snow as much as 30 to 40 centimeters or more, or of accumulated snow in depth. It left about 1,700 to 1,800 vehicles stranded on or near Van Rienen's Pass on the N3, sadly led to at least 2 fatalities due to hypothermia. That was according to the reports received. In the case of the more recent snow event of the past weekend, again, a preemptive South African Weather Service media release was issued well ahead of time, that is on Thursday, 26th of September 2024. However, in the particular case, the following was emphasized. The mechanism driving the snow production was expected to be fast-moving upper air trough, not a cut-off low as the previous one. An upper air trough refers to a low-pressure system that builds up in the upper atmosphere. It has a potential of resulting in heavy rains. The forecast snow depth was suggested by our numerical prediction models to only be of the order of 2 centimeters. And as such, was not expected to cause much disruptive impact at all. This was emphasized quite strongly and explicitly in the media release. Despite the relative lack of snowfalls, the South African Weather Service emphasized that there would still be significant risk associated with this system in terms of potential losses of livestock due to hypothermia in very cold, wet, and windy conditions in mountainous areas as well. Hence, farmers of small stock were encouraged to lead animals to safety prior to the cold change arriving over the eastern and southern provinces. Snow in late winter and early spring is not unusual, or should we call it a rare occasion at all. In fact, the more intense extreme snow systems tend to affect Southern Africa in very late winter, especially over the eastern provinces. We have even had snow in Johannesburg as late as October. You will remember the incident that occurred in 2011. Snow is phenomenon not restricted only to the winter month, or on rare occasions 3 times in the past century. Snow has occurred on New Year's Day over the KwaZulu-Natal Drakensberg. There you can get it from our record keeping. It's called SAWS Kailam. I see others are saying, really? It happened? Okay, so that is the source that I'm providing here. Now, looking at the general weather prospects in the days ahead, over the next few days, the surface high region south of the subcontinent will continue to advect cool, moisture-laden air over our eastern provinces. This will result in a sustained chance of light showers or rain over the KwaZulu-Natal and eastern Mpumalanga. A surface high ridge is a high pressure system that of which the consequences there is rain. Unlike the Karo flow, this one will just produce the normal rain that you will get. Then towards the end of the week, the eastern parts dry out and warm up, with the emphasis shifting to the western extremities of the country, where an approaching upper air disturbances over the Atlantic Ocean is expected to promote the development of isolated showers and thunder showers over Namibia, as well as the coast and adjacent interior of the Northern Cape. Consequently, in the week ahead, the weather is expected to be fairly benign, with no particularly severe or extreme weather anticipated by the South African Weather Service at this stage. If there are any changes, we will let you know. In general, however, the public should remain vigilant as the upcoming month of October and November in the Highveld region, encompassing the Northern Free State, Gauteng, and the Eastern Highveld of Mpumalanga, are well known to be particularly associated with severe storms and the possibility of large damaging hail and or strong damaging surface winds, more so than at any other time of the year. Moreover, given the expectation of a relatively hot summer over much of the country, communities should also be mindful of the likelihood of sustained spells of hot, dry weather, as well as the possibility of heat wave. During such events, the aged, infirm, as well as infants and toddlers are particularly susceptible to dehydration. The South African Weather Service, therefore, strongly recommend that everyone take care to stay hydrated and to support and assist the elderly and small children at such times. It is an unfortunate but well-documented reality that heat waves often lead to numerous fatalities if no mitigation steps are taken. I now hand over to my colleague, Dr. Christine Engelbrecht, to take us through the seasonal forecast. I thank you.
Good morning. So I guess the next question is, what can we expect for the season ahead after all the high impact weather that we had over the past few weeks? So in terms of the seasonal forecast for the remainder of spring and into the summer months of the 2024-25 summer season, our main climate driver, ENSO, the El Niño Southern Oscillation, is currently in a neutral phase. It is predicted to move into what we refer to as a La Niña event, which I guess everyone is familiar with. That is the opposite of an El Niño event. So usually during La Niña events, the Southern African region typically expect above normal rainfall. However, in this coming summer season, the La Niña is at this stage predicted to be weak, and then At this stage, the seasonal prediction can be generated up until midsummer, December, January, and February. And in the absence of a strong enso forcing, that is now because the La Nina event is predicted to be weak, the rainfall predictions are a little bit less uncertain. How do we know that? We look at different models, seasonal prediction models, when it comes to the seasonal outlook or the seasonal prediction. And the rainfall predictions from the different seasonal prediction models show variation or no clear signal in terms of whether above normal or below normal rainfall is favored over a particular area. So the exception to this is the southeastern part of the country, where most seasonal prediction models show or indicate above normal rainfall for the remainder of spring, as well as the midsummer season, which is the December, January, and February period. In terms of temperatures, maximum and minimum temperatures are predicted to be above normal over most of the country. When it comes to the prediction of maximum temperatures, in particular over the western interior parts of the country, the probability for warmer conditions than normal is relatively larger compared to the remainder of the country. So the next question, in terms of the recent snow events that seem to be occurring quite late, as it is already spring. As my colleague Radzani has mentioned, it is not rare. Climatologically speaking, in a study of Stander et al., which is a colleague of us at the South African Weather Service, he studied snow events, and in particular significant snow events over the period of 1981 to 2011. So in this study, that 60 snow events, 60 significant snow events, and he looked at all the days during that period. 60 significant snow events were identified. One of the first result from the study was seen that there's very strong seasonality in the occurrence of snowfall. Of course, we know it is mainly a winter phenomenon. However, these events occur from May through to October. During the month of May, just more than about 5% of, let's call it the snow season, just less than 5% of the significant snow events during the snow season occurs during the month of May. If we look at the end of the snow season, which is October, less than 5% of the significant snow events occur during October. But this shows us, climatologically speaking, snow events do occur even up as late as the month of October in our spring months. Then, just for some perspective, the months of June and July have the highest frequency of significant snow events. That's 25% of the snow events occur during June and 35% during the month of July. August, just less than 20% of the snow events occur during August, and September, just less than 15%. So the question, is this snow rare or is it unusual? As we can see from this study, where a snow climatology has been constructed, the answer is no. It is not rare. However, snow in October is not that frequent. If we look at this recent snow event, I think also compared maybe to other events, it is actually difficult for us to compare the impacts of these individual events. There are certain factors that make it more difficult. But in terms of the depth of the snow, I think even though it's difficult to compare it to historical data, we basically go on the impact, let's say, in terms of the closure of roads. But for example, in 21 September 2008, road closures occurred in the provinces of KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape due to snowfall, and accidents that occurred due to the conditions of the roads because of the snowfall. I think this recent event, it coincided with a long weekend, but I must say the depth of the snow is And again, it's difficult to compare it to historical data because the depth of the snow is not always kept on record, but by, more or less in some areas on the N3 up to 80 centimeters of snow. I think that is quite rare. But the impact, I think, is really is one of the snow events with one of the largest impacts in what we can recall now. But in terms of the time of the year that the event occurred, that is not unusual. So, I think I will conclude here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. We will jump straight to the question and answers, and they are still here to take your questions. We will take how many at a time? 3 at a time. We give them an opportunity to reply, and then we will take another round. Yes, first hand.
Hi, it's Mariska Kutzer from The Citizen. I just want to find out, just maybe, get confirmation. When will we get rain here in Gauteng? We haven't had proper seasonal rain. And also, I know you guys are weather experts and not plants, but could the weather be affecting even the jacaranda trees? I see it's not as purple as it usually is. And then also, if I'm understanding correctly what's been talking, or the briefing is, are we going to have a hot, dry summer? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Calvin. I'm from SABC News. I have 2 questions. The first question would be, what impact has global warming had on South African weather pattern or changes? And my second question is about the function expanse. It seems we saw what happened there. Can we anticipate such to reoccur or in any part of the country?
Thank you. Was it a hand at the back there? No, okay, yes. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
What is the outlook for December, the festive season? It's one of the predictions from
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we'll pause there and just get answers to 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, in terms of the seasonal prediction, in terms of rainfall and temperature, in temperature-wise, above normal temperatures are predicted for the remainder of spring, as well as for the midsummer period, up till when we can generate our seasonal forecast at the moment. So that will include December, January, and February. Of course, it's important to remember that when we do a seasonal forecast, for example, for December, January, and February, that season, it is the average, and in this case, let's say, take the maximum temperatures as an example, the average temperatures for that season that is predicted to be above normal. So overall, the December, January, February season is expected to be warmer than normal, and in particular so over the Western Interior. In terms of rainfall, as mentioned earlier on, with the weak La Nina predicted to start developing during spring. Currently, it's still in the ENSO conditions are still in a neutral phase. During the spring season, it's expected for sea surface temperatures to become cooler than normal over the central and eastern Pacific Ocean. In fact, it has just started over the eastern parts, but not over the central parts of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. And when that happens, it is predicted to cool down to reach the threshold of a La Nina event for this coming summer. However, most models indicate it for it to be a weak La Nina. So in terms of the rainfall patterns for the remainder of spring and the midsummer period over southern Africa, we are not that certain. The probabilities for above normal rainfall, which one usually expect or typically occurs during a La Nina event, is low, and it's a bit patchy. if I can maybe use that word to generate the image in your mind. If you have a map of Southern Africa, there are some areas over the eastern part and some areas over the western parts of the country where very low probabilities of above normal rainfall is indicated for the during spring and especially during the mid-summer. Spring is not that favorable for rainfall at the moment. The only area where most seasonal prediction models do indicate higher or have a more consistent sign or signal in terms of the rainfall outcome is over the southeastern parts of the country. That is, let's say, typically the northern parts of the eastern Cape Coast up to KwaZulu-Natal, that southeastern coastal and adjacent interior regions. So for the interior parts of the country, the rainfall outlook is not that favorable, and the signal is weak. So at the moment, I think the best we can say is that at this stage, we're not very sure what is going to happen over the remainder of the country in terms of the rainfall prediction for the rest of the spring season and the midsummer period. The signal is, however, for it to improve slightly towards the midsummer period. But this is also very important then why it is important to follow updates for the seasonal forecast, and especially in a season when one is not that sure of the outcome of rainfall, following the updates daily of the predictions, and it also especially in terms of whether that can have an impact, a negative impact, to follow the short-range predictions on a daily basis. I hope this answers it.
Okay, thank you. I will take one or two of the questions that are raised here. The first one is, when are we getting the first rain? We are all anticipating. It's been very dry. We're waiting for the first good rain, and it's not coming. Yeah, so most probably not this week, but let me explain a little bit what happens. We have got forecasters who interrogate the forecasting models. And those forecasting models, they give them a picture of what is it that they should be expecting. Hence, with the confidence, the experience, expertise that they have, they're able to provide that. So I have got with me here the senior forecaster who is expert in that field. So he will be able to respond to that. But I also would like to respond to the specific one, the jacaranda trees. It looks like there's keen interest in the jacaranda trees. But what I can say is when we talk of climate change, it's not confined in a small space. We're talking about a global event. And it manifests itself in through the extremes. We are living it. We can see it. It becomes extremely hot. If it's cold, it becomes extremely cold. If it rains, extremely or flood events. So that's how the climate change manifests itself. But in that process, some things will be affected and change. But we cannot explicitly come here and say the jacaranda trees are paling because of climate change. We can't make that determination. But just to get that bigger picture, that in the process, some things, especially within our ecosystem, will be affected by these changes. When we have got irregular heat waves that will stay for an extended period of time, and that's the manifestation of the climate change. I had, I think, in the same question I'm answering, the one of global warming that came through there. Now the repeat, as I indicate that. We are assisted by the models, and then we put our understanding, expertise, and experience that has been acquired to issue the forecast. At the moment, there's nothing that we can say is in the nearest shortest period. But as Christine has explained, the bigger picture, what we are seeing, doesn't look quite credible that something is really coming now in terms of the snow and that within this period. So, but the point that I want to emphasize, I want you to understand how we produce the forecast, and we cannot just say it like that. So the December outlook, I think she has explained it. I would like to give my colleague here, Puselezo, to just explain a little bit. Maybe he has got something in his pocket that will bring some drops. I thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, on the issue of the N3, I don't think in these 2 weeks we'll ever see the event of that magnitude. It was very easy. Events are not the same, but it was very easy. That week, I think I was part of the forecasting team at the time. It was easy to identify N3 as a potential route to be closed. But we did not only identify N3, we also identified N11 and also N5. However, the media has got their own interest. Sometimes they would emphasize certain areas. So we would find if you can go to Free State around the same time. I think R74 was also closed, and R74 is not that far from N5, which links Harrismith and Bethlehem. So those routes were also closed. Beyond that, I must point that we will see these events sometime in the future. Perhaps not this year, but sometime in the future. In the first 2 weeks, this week and next week, certainly not. But in the future, perhaps next year, many other years, we will see such events. The good thing is that we are using the impact-based forecasting, which consider both the vulnerability as well as the impact. So the likelihood of the event was well identified in the case of the previous event. What happened is we saw the model is showing the accumulation of snowfall. The model will show us many other things, parameters that we really don't want to talk about because they are scientific. But one of the output of those parameters was that we are going to have rainfall, or rather snowfall, that would be somewhere between 15 and 30 centimeters. So based on that, we knew that the road is going to be closed, hence we wrote a media release that pointed to that effect. We also emphasized in different other platforms that the N3, N5, and N11 would be closed. This would obviously connected with the rest of the other roads. So about the conditions, Dr. Engelbert, I'm not going to change your message. I understand, I ran with it. I just want to make an example. Dr. Engelbert, from time to time, referred to the average, above normal temperatures, below normal rainfall. That is an average. So sometimes after we make a statement like this, a different occasion happened. I will make an example. In 2005, there was a media convergence like this, where a statement was made that we're having the strong El Nino. That was 2005, and that the rainfall is going to be low. That was the case. But what happened 2 weeks afterwards was that there was a cut-off low that moved very slowly across the country and caused a lot of flooding. And as a result, now the message which was correctly captured was changed to say the Weather Service has lied, or the South African Weather Service has lied. They did not get it right, but that was just that event. Afterwards, a month later, it was back and dry, very dry again. Farmers were complaining and all that. So the initial message was correct. So I'm making this story so that If we get flooding, while we said below normal rainfall, that flooding is just one event. It should not cancel the main event, which is the average that Dr. Engelbrecht talked about. So that is perhaps the point I wanted to make. I think I'll end this far. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Mofokeng. Just on that note, to welcome Mr. Mofokeng. He came a little bit late when we have already started. He's a senior forecaster. His name is Puseletso Mofokeng. And we have got people that are streaming on the National Press Club Facebook page. And from there is a question that reads as follows. It says, it's from Tamasha Kanyi at East Coast Radio. The question is, you mentioned that there were 2 fatalities as a result of hypothermia. Please could you indicate where the death was reported? Is it in KZN or is it in Gauteng? The KZN government said there was only 1 fatality, so we'll appreciate some clarity in this regard, please. Any more questions from here? At least 2, and then we'll add to this one to make it 3 again. Yeah. Another question online.
It's from Joel Guy Chabata. And it reads, I have a question on what channels you use to disseminate severe weather warnings to the general public. How effective are they, seeing that in most cases, a lot of people seem to get caught unawareness? Also, authorities seem to act after the fact instead of organizing evacuations or other mitigating measures before an event.
Okay, thanks. Let's take these 2 and then we'll come back to this group.
Okay, thank you. The first one is the number of fatalities. The exact number that we reported here is 2 as per the reports, but I don't have a source with me. But if you are saying official report indicates 1, we are not going to dispute that. But that is based on what the information that we have. We cannot dispute the official report. Even when I reported here, I said as reported. So that's what we got. The second one is, which channels do we use to disseminate? Okay, South African Weather Service has a responsibility that's mandated by the legislation to provide the weather warnings, weather information and warnings to all citizens. Hence the media, I think this is one of the best platforms. When we see the media people, we are quite happy because that's the source or the channel through which our information comes through. You'll see that time and time again when there's an event, significant event coming, we issue a press release to say, take this, spread the news, let the people know. So the other social medias as well, maybe PS can also talk to that. Puseleso, he can talk to the other social media platforms that we use. But this is how we operate. South African Weather Service, we work hand in hand with the Disaster Management Center. So the National Disaster Management Center, when we issue the warnings and in agreement, preparedness and response, it comes from that point. And the mobilization of all the stakeholders, it comes through the Disaster Management Center. But we have got an advantage of utilizing the media platforms that do exist, radio, TV, newspapers, everything. When you get the media release, it says share it with everyone else. PS, I think you can come over.
Calling me PS, and then the media platform. Okay, they call me informally PS, so they're still talking to me. The media, or the channels we use, first of all, like Mr. Malala had said, we have to provide the information. We are only information providers. I think if we go to the disaster management, they have got their own structure, how they are going to respond, where the EMS is going to stand, where the police are going to. So they have got a channel. We play no part at all. We only provide the information and step aside. And we also use the disaster management. Once we send the information out there, the disaster management then forward the messages to the communities, to the municipalities and all that. I can see National Disaster Management Center does the same, Provincial Disaster Management Center does the same, municipalities, they do the same. So that's how we distribute our weather warnings. But that's not all. SABC has been our long-standing friend. In fact, we are bound to work together because obviously this has been the media that was there before. We even had the difficulty to adopt the new players in the media space, but we then had to go through lessons to accept democracy. So we then worked with everyone, including the ENCA, Newsroom Africa, all of them. Even in the time of AN7, we worked with them because our understanding is the message must go out there and get to as many people as possible. We do also use our website. So our website is www.weathersa.co.za. That is our primary source of information. I think anywhere else where people are comfortable with, they'll find the information. We also do use X, and we are having an office particularly providing that information. There's that product that we had for many years that we call regional and travelers focus. So there were two main forecasts that we've been sending out, but we're backing them up with the media feed. In other words, if there's anything new, we just put it there, so that those who prefer to use social media, they can find us there. The nice part is there are also other people who are interested in what we issue. They would then take our information and redistribute. I had Voxpox. I am not here to advertise them, but I heard that within a minute after we sent our forecast, they then redistribute it. And I can tell it's not because anybody is there to redistribute. I think they set up a certain software. Once our message comes, it just go. That's why it's so fast. So that's how we distribute our information. But like Ndate Malala has said, we use all the media. Like this morning, the reason why I'm late, I'm not here to make excuses. I woke up at 4 so that I push my work. When I wake up, I also got 2 calls that say I must have 2 interviews. So it means my preparation now is disorientated. So that's why when I get to work, I cannot catch up on time. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just simply saying that we can get calls from the radio. We are there in all languages: Sesotho, English, Afrikaans, Zulu. So we are there. So that's how we distribute the information. We are not only limited to a particular language. Sometimes when there's no language to be covered. For instance, last week I helped Mungano Lenene, and they speak Stonga, which is the language I'm not familiar with, but they compromised. I had to speak English. So we are just there. All of us, we are there, making sure that the information is available. On the issue of the reports, remember we provide the information. We are not out there in the streets. The EMS is there. They collect the information. If there are people who are having issues, they take them to hospital and all that. Those numbers are correctly recorded there. And then at some point they are then processed, we have access to them. So far, we cannot even confirm there are only 2. Let's remember also, I heard it's a hypothermia or hyperthermia. There are two types of these temperature conditions. So We cannot confirm that any other person was covered, but if you follow that information through the right channels, like the hospitals and all that, you will find it. You will find more than what we can say here, because we are not the original source. We take what you say, it becomes our information, but the fullness of the information is available from the right channels. We only provide the weather. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any more questions? Back to Pretoria. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much for organizing this briefing. I just wanted to check, the first thing was that with the snow events, is it affected or not affected by climate change? I haven't properly looked into it, but I briefly spoke to some professors and they said that it's like snow events won't necessarily increase under climate change. But I just wanted to check that. But I think it's also, like you spoke about earlier with disaster warnings, it's a good time to remind the public that because of climate change, weather events, so maybe not necessarily snow, but like heat waves, droughts, flooding, will become more frequent and intense. So I just wanted to make sure that that's correct. And also, if SAWS has data on how the weather has become more frequent and intense, because often when I report that, people will say, we don't have any data on this, so I just wanted to know from SAWS, which is like the official body, how far do our records go, and do we have data showing that it's, some events have become more intense, maybe not snowfall, but other things which we obviously need to be prepared for in terms of disaster risk management. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Going. Online, anything? Nothing. Final call. Okay.
Okay, so climate change, yeah, this is, okay, your first question was about the snow events. Okay, so what I can say is that snow events specifically for the South African region within the climate change context has not been investigated. But if we look at the work of one of our colleagues at the South African Weather Service, Dr. Andries Creer, he has done a very thorough study when it comes to temperatures. That's minimum temperatures, maximum temperatures, frost days, extreme heat days, for example. In his analysis on frost events, based on historical data over quite a long period, because you will need, in order to make a scientifically sound conclusion about whether it is becoming more frequent or less frequent in terms of frost days. He has indicated from station data from the South African Weather Service that frost day events have declined. So that frost days is not occurring as frequent as it used to be. So from that, we can then maybe deduce that the same is possible when it comes to snow events. In terms of such a study based on snow event data, we don't have that, but one of our colleagues at a university has mentioned the other day that he has been observing that specifically for the Drakensberg region, that he thinks there's a decline in snow events. But that is not based on data. But as I said, from the frost day analysis, based on observational station data, I think one can safely assume or make the deduction that it is also the case for snow events. However, within the climate change context, there are a few questions that we don't have answers to. And I think when it comes to snow events, in terms of the severity of the snow events or the impact associated with a snow event, if we think about the general theory within the context of climate change, that weather events is becoming more frequent, one can think, okay, the same may be true for snow events. On the other hand, the weather systems cold fronts, cut-off lows, and especially when it comes to cold fronts. I mean, with the previous event, there was a cut-off low system, but it also occurred with like cold frontal systems. If we think in terms that within climate change, the climate change context, that the westerly wind belt in which frontal systems, which brings frontal systems to the South African region, has already been observed to have shifted southwards. So that translates to that the frequency of frontal systems reaching the South African region is not as high as it used to be. However, also if we think of the Earth climate system, that balance, the weather is always striving towards balance. So if we think now with global warming, the mid-latitude regions is like warming up. There's a temperature gradient building up, let's say between the more or less the areas over which the South Africa is geographically being or occurring or located, and further south, that gradient is getting stronger. So then one can also think that when a system do manage to reach us within a warmer climate, that maybe the impacts associated with it will be quite intense because of the energy that it has. So although maybe less frequent, it is possible that it can become more or that it is also true for snow events, as it has been shown to be the case, for example, for thunderstorms over some parts of the globe. And that is definitely the case when it comes to heat waves. In terms of heat waves and climate change, heat waves is one of the weather events that we can already see has a more negative impact or is more intense as a result of climate change. For the South African region itself, it's an unpublished study, but at the Weather Service there are some heat wave studies going on. And in that, for example, we can see that the spatial extent of heat waves and the number of days that the heat wave occurs, because it needs to have a certain criteria for consecutive days. Now that number of consecutive days as well as the spatial extent seem to have increased. But that is still an unpublished study, still needs to go through peer review, but it's just an observation based on an observation based on observational data in terms of heat waves. I think that was it that I can remember.
Thank you, ma'am. This brings us to the end of the formal part. However, all three experts are still here. They can take one-on-ones for those that have got additional info that they may need to get from them. And just in closing, I am not alone. There are three members of my cabinet here. Dineo at the back. Aseri here. Oh yes, also at the back there. And Mr. William Balo here behind me. They are all members of the National Press Club Executive. And you are all invited to join. Those that are not members yet, you can go on our website, nationalpressclub.co.za, and all the information is there about how you can become members of the press club. And if you're already a member, look out in your inboxes all details of all the events that are coming up. We always send out all the time. So keep an eye on your inboxes, and we will see you again soon. And that brings us to the end. Thank you, and thank you for coming.